back-to-back Grand Prix victory for the world champion.
Let's keep bringing in upgrades, let's keep bringing performance, please. The fight's still on.
Is he in the title fight?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think you can discount them. Kimi Antonelli didn't look like he was threatening to beat George Russell at any time this weekend until the Grand Prix where he beat him. And I find that really bizarre.
Are you using me as a guinea pig or what's going on?
That was a pure rage against the machine.
Oh, big crash. Massive crash in the background. Max Verstappen into the wall.
It is just an example of where Max is and where Red Bull are at the minute. He's having to overdrive the car.
Has Fernando seen enough to commit to Aston Martin going forward?
I'm not sure, you know.
Hello and welcome to Zandvoort for F1 Nation's review of the Dutch Grand Prix. I'm Tom Clarkson, and joining me in the paddock is F1 correspondent Lawrence Barretto and FM1TV pundit and two-time Le Mans podium finisher Alex Brundle. Well, what a brilliant race for a last blast at Zandvoort. Guys, can I get your headline thoughts after that race? Lawrence, let's start with you.
Well, I kind of feel like Lando's back in the game. Back-to-back wins, back-to-back upgrades that McLaren have brought to track, and he didn't look like he was going to be in the position to fight for the win today. He himself said that, you know, he didn't think he would, and he went away and worked with a lot of details overnight. They did their homework, and he managed to get the job done. You know, considering it rained before the race, he had to do another restart as well after the red flag. Lots of things thrown at him, and he managed to get the job done.
Yeah, I think it was a masterclass in putting a race together from Lando Norris. And the headline for me is he found pace in one McLaren, particularly on the hard tyre in the middle of the race, but really also towards the end, that no one else could find. And I think that's a mark of a truly sort of competently, brilliantly delivered race from him. So really, really impressive from Lando. He went out there and won it.
And didn't get away well at the start either, right? Lost some places.
Yeah, he lost out a little bit at the start, definitely. And I think, well, you mean the second start, yeah, after we'd had the wet one. But actually, you know, you look at what all of our predictions were before the Grand Prix, and yeah, it looked like it was going to be a one-stopper where, you know, if you didn't get down to the first corner first, or indeed out of the first corner first, you were going to be finished. We were also decrying how bad the tyre degradation was going to be for the McLaren off the basis of the sprint race. Neither of those things materialised. It ended up being a wild two-stopper where Norris basically snatched the lead with some fantastic racecraft and did the job on the hard tyre.
I thought the turnaround by McLaren this weekend was extraordinary. I don't know whether you did, Lawrence, but after the sprint race, Lando was saying, we're not fast enough, and he was really unhappy. Were you surprised by their level of performance in the race?
I was surprised. I think Lando was surprised to an extent. And then obviously you look on the other side of the garage, and Oscar really did struggle for pace, and he wasn't able to extract anywhere near the performance that his teammate Lando was, and he was perplexed by it. So obviously there's question marks there across the garage, and then as a team as a whole in terms of what they're able to do. But we have seen that McLaren have been able to do this on a sprint weekend, as they've learnt the lessons pretty well between the sprint and quali and made some changes, and then overnight Lando's found different ways maybe to drive the car to try and compensate for some of the issues that they had. But as Alex said earlier, I think that the race that unfolded was one that we didn't predict anyway. So I think they obviously just did a much better job in terms of the way they prepared for it.
Lando also said he wasn't happy with the car in the pen after the race having won, though. And I think it's championship winning experience from Norris, recognising that you need to continuously improve. Okay, back-to-back Grand Prix wins, that's great. Two very similar circuits. We're going to, well, more similar than, you know, Hungaroring is to Monza, for example. We're now going to have to continue stepping forward. And I think Lando has kind of, at this stage of his career, as he might not have done earlier in his career, has kind of seen this before, where he recognises, okay, we've won a couple of races, that's great. What we now need to do is move into the second half of this championship and go and snatch it. And so that is why he finishes a race like this and goes, yeah, there's still things I'm unhappy with about the car. And that's why he sets a pole position lap and goes, the race car's not fast enough, because he knows you keep on moving forward.
But Alex, put your race helmet on, okay? And I think lap 54 is when he passed both Kimi Antonelli and Lewis to take the lead. Do you think he is driving better this year than he ever has done?
As well as he ever has done, certainly. I mean, there were times last year where it was pretty spectacular. I think that was a really smart piece of situational analysis from Norris, because he knows that Antonelli is leading the championship by just over 50 points, from Hamilton at that stage, and he knows that he has considerably less to lose. Antonelli's come up against Hamilton, who's been left out, who's not happy about it, but he's been left out, and they know they're going to have to clear him. And Norris sees that play out and thinks, hold on a minute, I can take advantage of this.
Around the outside, and Lando Norris is going to go through. Lando Norris gets past Kimi Antonelli, and that will surely eventually be for the lead.
Wow, that was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
And that's what you can do when you're Lando in the position that Lando's in this title fight. And I think that, it's understandable the way that Antonelli played that situation. I'm not sure the way that Antonelli played it is necessarily wrong either. When you look at how he came into this weekend and the advantage that he had in terms of the championship. But Lando just read it beautifully, both on track, both in the subtext and on the track. And, he described it as the moment that won him the race. I think, in the interplay between cars, there was a lot of background work that got done, but it's definitely as good as anything I've seen from him, yeah.
Do you think it was the most confident that we've seen Lando?
It was the most confident, and I think it was maybe the smartest that we've seen Lando. I think he really had to be clever in the way that he did it. He said after the race, he knew that was his one moment to get the job done. And I think maybe in the past, Lando might not have been able to do that. I think maybe he's left it too late. He's kind of then fallen into a rhythm where he couldn't find a way through. Whereas I thought he was pinpoint accurate today on, here's my opportunity, I'm going to go get it. And I think he just did the best out of it today.
It's a far cry from a Lando that we've, we haven't, we've tried not to, but occasionally accused of bottling it. He definitely didn't bottle that, did he? He turned up, he got it done, and he sent it off into the distance. It was mega.
I think he's grown as a driver and as a person, actually, since winning the championship. Do you guys agree? Just there's none of the insecurities that were there before.
But that's normal, right? Because I think when you've got that World Championship trophy that you see every time you open your door and it's on the mantelpiece and it reminds you that you have gone and done it. And actually, in that early phase of this year, do you remember Lando was saying, I've done it now, like all of the weight is off my shoulders. Honestly, I think if he never wins the World Championship again, he will die happy. And I think that has alleviated the pressure that's on his shoulders, and it allowed him to go and take advantage of situations like today where he's chasing and he doesn't let anything kind of cloud his judgment. So yeah, I think he's definitely got rid of some of the demons maybe that were within his head. I think he's always been very open and honest about talking about that. And we haven't talked about that at all this year. And I know the performance level is off, but we're talking about a Lando that has stepped on, is that a different kind of character from last year.
And he's taken 8 points out of Antonelli's lead. He's now in P4 in the championship. I mean, let's look bigger picture now. First up, is the McLaren the fastest car in Formula One right now?
I think it probably isn't just now, because I still think Mercedes is the best all-round car. And I don't think Mercedes personally did the perfect job this weekend. Whereas I think McLaren were able to kind of go on that upward trajectory and emerge as the fastest, having done the best job across a weekend. But I think they're right there. And I think that's what the interesting thing is when we're going to start talking about the title battle. They brought an upgrade that worked in Hungary. They brought another one that's worked here, and they still haven't got the most out of it. We haven't seen an upgrade on Mercedes since Canada. So I think that what they are doing is what McLaren have done for the last 3.5 years, which is every time they bring an upgrade, it's delivered performance. And so I think they have pulled themselves into that fight, and it might be a bit of back and forth now kind of going forward. And it's actually down to Ferrari to see whether or not they can make it a three-way fight.
The McLaren was blindingly quick through the quick corners here, wasn't it? I think 7 and 8 in particular, turn 7 and 8. He said in the press conference, Alex, if we can improve our slow speed pace, I can win every race from here.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a Mercedes power unit, so in theory they can do everything that the Mercedes can do. We know the gear ratios. I've seen enough data now to know the gear ratios are slightly different, but I don't think it'll be a damning performance factor. What they did this weekend is they gave Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri quite a stiff, non-compliant car. You could see it in the way that they were driving, particularly when the car dived into turn 3 and bounced over sort of the curbs through turn 8. And then they've put all of that leverage over the tyre in the hands of the drivers. And Norris has been able to massage the tyre while still having all of the aerodynamic performance that having a car that's a little bit stiff for the racetrack gives you. That was an outstanding performance by Lando, an outstanding personal performance by Lando. I still think the Merc is the best car in the field, and I still think that the last 2 venues have flattered the McLaren, and I completely agree with Lawrence that actually, you know, this is peak McLaren. You've got to remember that we're in a environment where every upgrade that you bring costs cost cap, which is tight. Every upgrade that you bring costs the aerodynamic hours of testing and development. So actually, you know, we could look back at this moment and go, "Ooh, too soon, Junior." You know, that what did you bring? Was that it? Was that what McLaren had to bring to this car? And then when Mercedes bring an upgrade, they step forward again. There's a tremendous recency bias to the way that we evaluate performance in Formula One. And you know, whilst they're up there today, I definitely think there's big scope in the Merc still.
Right. So it's 2 wins on the bounce for Lando Norris. One word from each of you: is he in the title fight?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, that was 2.
Yeah, I don't think you can discount them. And the reason I say that, sorry, that's lots of
way
words.
more words.
That's good.
Yes. And the reason you can't discount them is the amount of reliability issues that they've had. There's a huge ebb and flow in the points that I can see through the rest of this year.
I know. And you just look at, I think we're going to be sat there at the end of the season looking back at China. That double did not start for McLaren could really hurt them. This episode is sponsored by Hexclad. Summer might be winding down, but hopefully there are still a few more evenings to enjoy some good food outside before autumn really kicks in. And if you enjoy cooking, you'll know there's usually a compromise or two involved in the kitchen, isn't there? But your cookware doesn't need to be one of them, not if you upgrade to Hexclad. They've taken the performance of stainless steel and mixed it with the convenience of non-stick. Not only do you get excellent heat control and a proper sear, they're also really easy to clean afterwards and dishwasher safe for those of you that have one. And I like that they're designed to take some of the little annoyances out of cooking. The stainless steel handles stay cool while in use. They're metal utensils safe, and you can even put them in the oven at temperatures of up to 480 degrees Celsius. Plus, every Hexclad product comes with a lifetime warranty. More than 1 million customers already use them, and Gordon Ramsay uses Hexclad both at home and in his restaurants, and we all know he's not exactly easy to impress, is he? The end of summer sale is here. Get up to 40% off Hexclad and upgrade your kitchen for the new season. Just head to hexclad.co.uk/nation. That's Hexclad, HEXCLAD.co.uk/nation. And support our show and let them know we sent you. Lawrence, it was a P2 and a P3 for Mercedes. You said a little bit earlier that you think they didn't do perhaps the best job this weekend. Just to explain how the weekend unfolded for them.
Well, I think on Kimi's side of the garage, we've seen a trend this season where on the tracks where he doesn't perform so well, it's kind of a bit up and down. So, you know, obviously he started the weekend very strongly, then kind of dropped back, had that error in sprint quali, which obviously put him in the back foot with the damage that he suffered. But then he's managed to find a way to rescue P2. So I think if he had actually had that smooth weekend building up to the Grand Prix, I think he himself knows he should have won this race, out there. I think George has come in and he's lacked the confidence, and he's been very open actually about how much it's hurt him the way that the first half of the season's gone. He said he's recharged and he kind of needed this weekend to kind of show that he's still got it, to remind himself that he's still got it. So he's got a P1 in the sprint and a P3 in the race, but that wasn't his peak. So I think when you add all of that together, I think it's just showing that neither of them at the moment are getting the best out of the car. I think that the team are doing a very good job to try and rescue weekends. And that's what's keeping Kimi kind of stretching the lead again here today and kind of still keeping George in the mix. But I think there is definitely more to come from them if they can just have cleaner weekends through Friday into the weekend.
Talking about cleaner weekends, Kimi referred to the mistakes he's made. He said, it's a bit of a wake-up call for me. We've come back from the summer break. You have to keep pushing. You have to seek perfection if you're going to win a world championship.
And isn't that incredible that we're talking about a guy who's in his second season in Formula One? He's already talking like that in the way that a veteran would, or someone who's more decorated than he is just yet. But I think Kimi's gone away. I interviewed him for F1TV for this weekend. And even just the way he's sitting in his chair and chatting to me, and the way that he's quite chatty and wants to have a bit of banter before and afterwards, but then gets very serious when he needs to get serious and then pulls it back, I think just shows the mindset that he's in at the minute. And I think that shows the development that he had from this point last year. He had that awful run through the European swing of the season. He has not had a bad weekend so far this year. And I think he's just doing a phenomenal job for a sophomore.
And do you think there's any evidence that he's tightening up, feeling the pressure?
No. And I think that's remarkable, frankly, because I guess admittedly, George isn't there putting the pressure on him. And I guess from weekend to weekend, it's unclear who else is going to do that. Lando has obviously done it the last couple of races. Charles had that win at Silverstone. So it's come from different places, but he hasn't had that consistent pressure, that consistent rival to then test whether or not he is capable of overcoming it. But at the minute, he doesn't show any sign of being worried about that. Even when he has a bad weekend, he has a bad session, it doesn't have an effect on him for the rest of the weekend. And that was not the Kimi of last year. So I think that what he's been able to do, he's worked with Bono, hugely experienced engineer who's, I'm sure, has helped him with that. And Toto, and the whole way that Mercedes have managed him, and his dad as well has kind of managed him, I think it's just helped him morph himself into this kind of character whereby what is put on the table at the minute, he is able to cope with.
This weekend, though, was Norris versus Russell. It was Norris versus Russell in all of the qualifying sessions, Norris versus Russell in the sprint. And then you get to the Grand Prix. Where did Russell's pace go? He'd proved it in race conditions. Okay, he's moving forward and he's, with the field, but he then proved it again in qualifying conditions, okay, albeit out-qualified by Lando Norris. They both made a little bit of a mistake on the lap. Lando's is slightly smaller than George's. Kimi Antonelli didn't look like he was threatening to beat George Russell at any time this weekend until the Grand Prix where he beat him. And I find that really bizarre. And that's something that George is definitely going to have to look at, because when the chips were down, the speed just wasn't there for George in the Grand Prix. And once again, when the actual moment came, Kimi stepped up. It might have been late on in the race weekend, but when the points were handed out, Kimi was there again. And I think that George will go home seeing this as, a one that got away. I think, as we've mentioned a couple of times, the Mercedes was probably the best car here. Lando's delivered an outstanding performance, but so good of George. He will have thought, I should be leaving Zandvoort, having taken points out of my teammate, with the biggest cup in hand, having taken points out of my teammate in this championship. Instead, I'm leaving, having been moved out of the way in the middle of the Grand Prix, finishing third. Right, well, we need to work out how we went from a Saturday that ended like that to a Sunday that started like this.
Are we reading too much into that radio message about them swapping positions in that Grand Prix?
No, I mean, it's exactly the right thing to do. And I think George actually was incredibly magnanimous about it after the race and has been around long enough to recognise that it was the right thing to do, because they had two Ferraris breathing down their neck. They both pitted onto the soft tyre. It made total sense. They did not need a four-way battle for second position in the Grand Prix. They needed both Mercedes on the podium, which is what they got. George defended brilliantly to retain that podium position. But again, defending brilliantly is not what George wants to do. George wants to win brilliantly. Whether we are or whether we aren't reading too much into it, it's still a moment in time if you put yourself in the cockpit where he's had to move out of the way the first time this year and, you know, the first meaningful time this year, and actually let Kimi Antonelli come through and then stand next to him a step lower on the podium and know that that's the way that they've played
But
it.
still on the podium. First one since Silverstone a few races back. Did you see evidence when you were looking at the car's body language on track that Russell was happier with it this weekend than he has been in recent races?
There's nothing obvious. I mean, the Merc has looked slightly pointy mid to exit of the corner, but Russell's been just putting in the tidy laps throughout the weekend, the way that we've seen Antonelli do. I think Antonelli struggled a little bit. I think he was a bit slow off the mark, to be honest, after the summer break. Maybe just still... Honestly, I think it comes with the mindset, you know? If you're the kind of guy that can stay relaxed, you know, in your teens when you're winning Grand Prix, you're the kind of guy that turns up from the holidays and sort of needs a bit of a kick to get back going again. It's both ends of the spectrum, right? And I think actually the Grand Prix brought Kimi back alive because all of a sudden there was something to fight for.
I feel the litmus test, though, for how Kimi is dealing with the situation, the championship, is going to come at Monza, his home race, the one that he really wants to win. Maybe all his old classmates are going to turn up like they did at Imola last year. I don't know. But if he is as cool and as calm as he was here in Monza, then I think he's set fair for the rest of the year. That will be my reading on that.
I think that's a fair point. I think he identified after Imola last year that he just wasn't approaching home races appropriately. Like, he just packed too many things in. I think he had his school friends or his class come to the track, and look, he loved it, and he is the loveliest guy and will do anything you ever ask him to do because he's that kind of person. But I think he identified that distracted him. It took too much out mentally. And then I think he would have learnt that lesson again in Monza. So I think coming back this year, he just won't let it happen again. And I think Toto Wolff's already said it, but he's going to take engine penalties for that race. So Toto says that's going to take the pressure off. So actually, we're going to be robbed of finding out whether or not he can take that pressure. But I think, again, that's just another example of Mercedes and his team being really pragmatic about trying to manage Kimi in the best way possible.
Do you know what, maybe the flip side of it is we're going to see just how happy George Russell is, because with Kimi Antonelli taking the engine penalties at Monza, this is the opportunity for Russell, isn't it, in Italy, to really eat into his 59-point championship lead. And can George deal with that?
I almost feel bad saying this is yet another weekend where George has to really get on it because his title fight might completely evaporate, or his challenge might completely evaporate. But I think you're right, Tom, because there's going to be a massive gap between the cars, in theory, if George gets the job done when he should do in quali. And if he isn't able to make some meaningful dent in that championship deficit, then it is going to be really difficult for him mentally to recover. But then that said, George is a super experienced driver, right? We were talking about last year about what great job he did. He was one of the top 3 drivers, what he was able to get out the car. That driver hasn't disappeared. So I'm not saying that he's going to completely crumble, but I think as we head into the final phase of the championship and Kimi grows in confidence, George needs to find a way to just nip it in and just get a decent chunk out that lead.
This is the fellow we used to call Mr. Saturday because he was so good at delivering the lap under pressure when it mattered, right? You know, it's amazing how drivers' careers in environments change, isn't it?
Let's talk Ferrari now. Hamilton finished P4, Charles Leclerc P5. Lewis was very frustrated, both with strategy and the lack of team orders.
Great way of wasting time, guys. Good job. Are you using me as a guinea pig or what's going on? How long you have me stay out?
Lewis, it was great to see that you had the pace today to fight for a podium, and I didn't quite get it at the end. So what's the overarching kind of emotion? Because you almost had it, did you? Almost.
Yeah, I gave it absolutely everything today, and I tell you, it's so close at the top. Really, really hard battling. But I moved forwards. I think qualifying needed to be a bit better, but Mercedes are gaining like 0.4 a second just on the straight, so that's really hard to capture everywhere else. It just shows we've got a really good car, and if we can somehow improve our power unit and get a bit closer to them, which I trust in the team that we're working as hard as they can to do so, hopefully we can be even closer and even more in the mix between those guys.
I could really feel how much you wanted it on team radio today. I don't think I've heard you that frustrated. Does that just show how competitive it is? You want to results hang on those decisions?
I want to win. I'm here to win, and it is difficult when you see, when you're looking ahead and you see the two Mercedes drivers, they get the call and it's done, and they execute straight away. They let Kimi by and let him get on with the race, and I was on a different strategy, and it's not the same here, and that's a little bit difficult, but we just have to take it. We'll take it offline, and when I go back now, I'll speak to them about it.
Thanks, Lewis.
I think when you look at this race, and maybe I'd include Hungary, the last one as well, on paper they both looked good for Ferrari. They've under-delivered for different reasons at both racetracks. How do we read what Ferrari's done here, first of all?
Honestly, I think it's a case of what might have been. I think the reason why we saw or heard Lewis Hamilton was so frustrated on the radio is because I think he just felt he had the car to minimum be on the podium, and their qualifying form, both Charles and Lewis have said that has been their undoing this weekend, because it's just put them out of the fight. And, no matter how fast you are, once you're behind the McLarens and the Mercedes, you just can't, especially on a track where it's so difficult to overtake, you just can't get yourselves in the fight. So I think Ferrari, there are some positives, because obviously they're adding performance to the car with updates. So the car is getting faster. They are making gains. They're just not generating results from them. And again, there were little examples today of strategic weaknesses within the team. They just didn't really handle operationally the race in the best way. And I think that's probably left Charles and Lewis not like angry or annoyed, because they know fundamentally the car is good. It's just that, and it's just disappointed that they haven't been able to get the best out of it.
Yeah, sometimes Lewis is very downbeat. Sometimes he's very harsh on himself, but he's always polished. You don't see a huge amount in the media from him of like naked ambition, which is quite clearly there, obviously. Nobody becomes that successful in a racing car without a generous helping of it. And the eyes just turned to steel when you asked him that question. I'm sure you noticed it standing just in front of him, and it just went, I want to win. And I'm used to Mercedes, or I see Mercedes, in fact, and no doubt remember Mercedes. And I think that shows that he's got a sniff of a championship. That's what he came to Ferrari for, to win a championship in red, to win more championships than anyone else in Formula One. And he's seen something that has got in his way today of progressing that directly. And that sort of pure ambition escaped momentarily, didn't it? Escaped onto the airwaves, and then it escaped into the media pen, and you could see it. He's such a sporting mind, Lewis, that he keeps it under control most of the time. I think that's what you saw from him today. A comparison also perhaps between the environment he won those championships in, where for the majority of it, or if not all of it, he was really, he was top dog in the team, and if there was movement to be done, it was out of Lewis Hamilton's way, to a scenario where, as we know, he's much more equal with Charles across the garage and doesn't necessarily have that button to push as directly or that facility to play with.
Do you think you would have got a different interview in the pen without that late VSC? He might have got that P3 and we would have had a different Lewis Hamilton, right?
I think we would have had a different Lewis Hamilton in the sense that he would have been happy to have got what he thought was the bare minimum. I still think he probably would have wanted to get across this hunger that he's got, in that he can feel it. We saw it when he won that race in Spain. He feels like they're on the precipice of something, And I think he just doesn't want them to let it go. And I think he might feel like that was a really good opportunity to speak externally, but also internally, about what they need to do, because they're fighting. They're in the fight now, right? There's no messing about. There's no excuses. And so I think it was really refreshing to have that kind of Lewis, I think.
But he knows when he's talking to you that he's also going a bit off piste. Right in the middle of that answer, he goes, "Yeah, we'll take this offline," but and that's kind of a. I know I'm talking more directly than I normally do, but I want everybody to know this, and it's exactly to your point.
Is there a repeat of the problems that he had with Riccardo Adami last year, his race engineer? Do you think Carlos Santi, his current engineer, is going to be going, hang on, this is slipping away. How do I keep my driver happy?
No, I don't think it's a repeat. Admittedly, we haven't really heard Lewis talk much more about Carlos Santi recently in the way that he did just after that win in Spain. But I actually think today was maybe more just generally the way the team is operating. You know, they didn't maybe bring Charles in as early as Lewis felt they should have done based on the strategy that they were running. So I think it is more like a bigger picture kind of thing rather than specific problems. Because I think actually, generally, Lewis is in the best place that he's been for a long time in terms of the setup that he's got around him, the inner circle that he's got, the way that he's communicating with the team. But I think this is all adding back to that same point that I think he can feel it's there. And I think that's why he's getting so agitated, because I think it's not just having a bad day for just having a bad day. It's having a bad day and losing some real potentially good results.
That was a pure rage against the machine. It was like the way this team is operating is preventing me from getting what I deserve out of this race. And I'm not happy about it. But I think he'll consider himself joint with his engineer as well. Like that's a you and me should be upset about what's going on here. The thing is, I don't think what happened today, you know, if you would have, for example, pitted Leclerc a lap earlier, would have really constituted prioritizing Hamilton. I just think it's, you know, when you look at how Mercedes did it and George gets out of the car and goes, yeah, it was sensible. Kimi was in front of me. We switched the cars around. It all made sense. It's just efficiency. The anger is not, you know, I should be the number one driver and you should be burying that guy for me. That's not the way that that's not the inference, and that's not the way that he's speaking. The anger is, there is a better way to do this. You know, the cogs of this machine can turn more efficiently, and that's what they need to do, and make cleaner calls in the races.
It's 59 points now that he's behind Kimi Antonelli in the championship.
I know, but you know, realistically, he's now also joint with George. The reality is that if the Ferrari goes considerably quicker and is considerably more reliable than the Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton has the opportunity to win the Drivers' World Championship. Neither of those things involve Charles getting out of the way on a particular day in time.
This is a paid advertisement by BetterHelp. Whenever you think you've got everything planned out, life has a funny way of throwing you a few curveballs, doesn't it? You can spend a lot of time worrying about where you're heading or whether you're making the right decisions, only for something completely unexpected to come along and change everything. And while that can be difficult at the time, sometimes it's only looking back that you realise how much you learned from having to adapt, or that it took you somewhere you never would have planned to go in the first place. I think that's worth remembering when life does feel uncertain. None of us can know exactly what's around the corner, and we don't always have to have all the answers straight away. But having someone to talk things through with can give us some much needed clarity and support, and that's why BetterHelp exists. BetterHelp is one of the world's leading online therapy platforms, with more than 30,000 therapists worldwide and millions of people already served globally. You don't have to navigate life's changes alone. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/F1Nation. That's betterhelp.com/F1Nation.
Oh, big crash. Massive crash in the background. Max Verstappen into the wall. And the greasy surface finds the home hero into the wall and out of the race.
The grandstands were orange, weren't they? The last Dutch Grand Prix, people were here to see their main man, Max Verstappen, and he crashes on the opening lap. I mean, thoughts on what happened there, first of all?
I mean, it's a could have happened to anyone accident. I think you know, though, how aggressive Verstappen can be on those opening laps. You only have to look at the Grand Prix here last year and see him go hauling around the outside of turn 2, just about hang on to it. You know, these cars have a tremendous amount of torque. And, you know, occasionally, brilliant drivers drop it. And that's what happened. I mean, you know, you're not exactly short of mitigating factors in the way that the conditions were in the scenario Verstappen's in. He's had difficulty with the balance of the car all year, but it's not really that, is it? It's just damp at the area of the circuit it rained last. He's trying to make hay because he knows that realistically, if you look at where Lawson finished, a sort of distant 7th, the reality is the Red Bull's not really fast enough on an even playing field to beat the Ferrari, the McLaren, or the Mercedes. So he's trying to do something on a slightly damp start and puts it in the wall.
It is just an example of where Max is and where Red Bull are at the minute that he's having to overdrive the car, you know, constantly. He didn't need to maybe take the kind of risk that he did going that close to the white line. But to Alex's point, well, he had to try and make something happen. And I think that it kind of is a microcosm of where Red Bull are at the moment. They're the 4th best team. They're seeing that Mercedes, McLaren and Ferrari on any given weekend are pretty much of a muchness. You know, the 3 teams were within a 10th of each other in sprint quali. You know, so from that perspective, Red Bull are falling away from this fight on a weekend where he obviously committed his future to Red Bull until the end of 2030, 4 more years with that team. It was pretty disappointing, especially as it was the last Dutch Grand Prix. But I think that that's just where they are at the moment. That's what they've got, and it's a question of now how long is it going to take for them to get back again?
It's a short lap here at Zandvoort. Were you surprised by the gap between, you know, Red Bull and the guys in front?
Yeah, I was actually. But, you know, Verstappen's then not in the Grand Prix, right? So you've got Lawson on not his first day at Red Bull, but that's a very long story. But his first day this time round. And he is then in sort of no man's land, just driving his Grand Prix, doesn't really have a benchmark. I actually think it's a bit of a shame for Lawson that Verstappen wasn't in the Grand Prix. You know, obviously it might move him a position up the road, but in this opportunity, wouldn't it have been great for him to have that benchmark to be able to point at? Now he's not going to be able to say, you know, finished in 7th place, 3 seconds behind Max Verstappen. It's just what it is.
I thought they did a great job. I think for Yuki, he's never driven a 2026 spec car. And do you remember how the drivers were complaining at the start of the year how different these cars were to drive? And Yuki is parachuted in with 1 practice session. Liam, to a lesser extent, but still impressive extent, has gone to the works team where he had some demons and he's still gone and got the job done.
Well,
so,
I mean, do you remember China last year? He was last on the grid and then he was given his marching orders after the race. I felt to come back in, to conduct himself in the way that he did, so positively out the car, inside the car, to qualify within 1/10 of a second of Max Verstappen was nothing short of stunning, actually, by Liam Lawson. I think it proves how much he's grown as a person in the last 12 months or so.
And he still wasn't that pleased with that. He still felt that there was more to come, which I think shows how he's kind of moved his personal bar as to what he should be able to deliver. I think
I think that was his message to the media. I think surely inside he was hugely satisfied, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it could have gone too much better. I mean, you can jump straight in and beat Max Verstappen, but I think that's potentially a little bit of an unrealistic game. You've got to remember that 2025 was Liam Lawson's first full season in Formula One. He seems like he's been around for ages, but actually he's got a full season under his belt now, and it's a great opportunity for both of them. I don't exactly see where Yuki fits in the field in terms of being offered a seat anywhere off the back of doing a good job in the Grand Prix. But I'm sure it won't do him any harm for the future.
Now, we did a show on Thursday, just before the Grand Prix, Lawrence and I, about Max re-signing until 2030. I'd love to get your thoughts, Alex, on why you think he's made such a long commitment to Red Bull.
You know, I really don't like these sort of conceptual contract lengths, because I know that there are so many caveats, clauses, hoops to jump, that actually what you're doing there is that is the absolute, what you're doing with all of these drivers is that is the absolute longest they're going to be in the car for. It's a long commitment. There must be something on Max's side and something on the team's side that says this needs to improve, or I have
in 12 months' time we're going to be having, is Max staying or is he going? Are you telling me that?
But literally, every single Formula One driver will have a sequence of clauses, however extreme or not extreme, that allow them to move on from their current contract. What it is a moment in time where Max has offered a vindication of Red Bull and the direction that it's going in. And I think actually, the media report that we saw, or the lovely social media content that they put out where Lauren Mekies is adding a hyphen between resigns and re-signs, is really the point. It's really the point, is that, and I think that's pretty much all it is. Is Max basically going, yeah, this is my intention for now. In terms of like it being until 2030, there's a lot of Formula One racing to go before then, Mr. Clarkson.
I think that's very fair. I think that's probably always been the Verstappen's approach to contracts, which is let's just get this done, and if everything goes well, we'll see out this contract. But I think they are so smart. Raymond is an incredible manager, and I think he will always be looking out for the best for his driver, and the best is to give themselves the best home and allow the team to rebuild around him, but also give him options that if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, they have got solutions in place. They've talked to McLaren and Mercedes now in the last 12 months, so they already kind of know where they stand with both those teams. So he's put the groundwork in just in case.
Can you imagine the flip side if it had worked out the other way for Lauren Mekies? And, you take over Red Bull, well, you'll sort of take over Red Bull in the middle of this outflow of talent, and then right on the end of it, Max Verstappen leaves.
Max resigns.
It would have been disastrous, and the relief for Laurent must have been huge that Verstappen signed on the dotted line.
Let's talk about Aston Martin now. Fernando Alonso came home in 9th to take 2 points, only the team's second points finish of the season. Here's what the two-time world champion said to you, Lawrence, in the pen.
Very happy for the team, as I think they nailed all the decisions today. The strategy was the right one, the starting tire was the right one. At the end, a couple of virtual safety cars, so we were debating if stopping or not. We decided not. So I think, all the decisions they made, they were the correct ones today. So thanks to that mix, I think we are in the points. The car was, performing well, very low tire deck today. So, happy for the team. Hopefully we keep this momentum into the next few races, and big congratulations to everyone.
Did it feel like a step on the chassis and the engine side this weekend?
Yeah, definitely on the chassis. I think we brought more new parts here, and I think now in the race, the car was very easy to drive, very easy on tires. I think that's definitely a benefit there. So everything that we are bringing from the chassis side is delivering performance on track. On the engine side, it's more difficult as we don't have a clear compare to the previous spec. Obviously, we're in the points, so maybe there is more power and we need to take it. But still, especially on the drivability side, we need to improve and to get a little bit consistency that seems that we lost with this spec too.
So how did he do it?
He did it with good strategy. They started on the right tyre. He made the most of the chassis updates that they brought here for the second successive race. They had a new updated Honda power unit. They weren't too clean on the drivability, both drivers here, but the feeling from Honda at least is that it was a step forward. I'm not sure Fernando was agreeing quite with that, but he was really pleased with the way the chassis improved. He's got a car that he can fight with now, and I think it's abundantly clear that he feels like there is opportunity here to make progress. And he also knows that the team have got to do everything right operationally to get the most out of a race. And on a race like this, where there was opportunity, they got the most they could out of it.
He did strategy 1, Tom. Nobody else did strategy after the red flag. He did strategy. A big long one stop, which was right at the top of my sheet. Nobody did it, which was slightly worrying. From the soft to the hard, benefited a little bit from the penalties, but not to be negative, because I think he drove brilliantly, and actually the way he kept pace at the end on the hard tyres, under quite a lot of pressure from Gasly, I think at the end of the race. But yeah, he obviously had he kind of stealthed into it on a big sort of hat of old kind of Hail Mary sort of one stop, and it was great, and it's great to see Aston get some points.
And if anyone's going to deliver you 37 laps or whatever it was on the hard tyre, it is Fernando Alonso. He is the tyre whisperer, right?
You can just imagine him in there, can't you? Thinking it through, front end, rear end, managing the tyres as they degrade away, communicating it all with the team. It's experience. It's experience. It's what they, in all seriousness, it's what they brought him here for, to deliver a drive like that and maybe pick up points early in the development curve of a car. I mean, I'm not sure they were expecting the development curve to be quite as long or curvy, but they, to deliver points early in the development of a car that they might not have otherwise got, and he's done the job.
So, has Fernando seen enough, felt enough through the steering wheel to commit to Aston Martin going forward? He's the last big name, really, on the grid that we're still wondering what he's going to be doing in 2027.
I'm not sure, TC, whether or not he's decided. I kind of get the feeling he's kicking the can down the road a little bit longer, just wants to buy.
What's he waiting for?
Well, he's not in a rush, right? So he knows that Aston will wait for him for as long as he needs to make this decision. But I guess he needs to find out more about the steps that Honda can make. Can they, together as a team, improve the drivability? Can the next set of upgrades that Aston bring on the chassis side deliver? Can Honda just prove to him that they have got on top of it, and it's just a matter of time? He needs more answers, I think, because it's still quite a small sample. It's still Hungary and Zandvoort.
Loz, he said coming into this weekend, I just want to see that everything's pointing in the right direction and that we're making progress. He talked to you in the pen about how pleased he was with the chassis. Honda maybe have a little bit of work to do, but I think both drivers said it was better.
He's going to have a think about it over the winter break.
Isn't this him being the wily old driver that he is? And he's realised that there's no other driver with World Championship status out there, and he's just waiting for Lawrence to agree to his terms.
I mean, he's kind of earned it, hasn't he, in terms of what he's been able to achieve. And he knows the market, and he knows, Tom, that he is the most decorated driver still left on it. So I don't think he needs to move first. I think he's more than happy for them to continue the chase. He said that he's going to sit down with Lawrence and Adrian at some point in the next couple of weeks to chat more about it. I think there probably is this underlying feeling within his camp and Aston that he is going to stay, but looks like he's going to make them work for it to kind of get that deal done. Because the reality is, at the minute, Fernando Alonso's not ready, I don't think, to give up on Formula One. To my mind, that means he is going to sign a deal. It's just a matter of when.
Well, would the Madrid Grand Prix be the perfect time?
You should work in communications, TC. That sounds like the ideal time to do it.
On the topic of drivers re-signing, will they, won't they? Williams have got their men again for 2027. Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz committing in the build-up to this Dutch Grand Prix. They were fighting for 14th, and they ended with Sainz locking up into turn one and crashing into the side of Albon. What a way to celebrate those new contracts. I mean, did you speak to them in the pen? What vibe did you get from them?
Well, I expected two very different race drivers when they came over to talk to me, because normally when teammates go and they collide like that, it's the cardinal sin. So they're obviously going to be furious. One's going to be furious, one's going to be embarrassed. But actually, neither of them seem that bothered, because the pace of the car is just not there. And that is their greatest irritation. Carlos essentially said, I don't care about fighting for positions as low as this, because points are out the window at the minute. And with Alex, he kind of almost just smiled, because up until that point, he'd made a bunch of positions at the start, I think 3 or 4 places, was actually tickling the points paying positions early doors. And then the race just unraveled because they're too slow. So, yeah, okay, they came together. Yeah, okay, it's annoying. There was damage. Yeah, they are actually limited on parts, and that's not ideal. But at the end of the day, I think it shows the miserable position that they're in at the minute. They're fighting for 14th. Aston have made this step. Like, it just looks like they're in a world of pain, and even colliding with each other isn't enough to kind of get them going, because that's not the big picture here.
Well, they would have been invisible in that Grand Prix had they not collided. We are at least talking about Williams in this pod.
Pretty sure that's not what James wants there, is it?
Guys, what a race. I want driver of the day from both of you.
Yuki Tsunoda, I think, is my driver of the day. Put a great move on Pierre Gasly into down the backstretch into turn 7. Turned up from Greece, for jumped back to Milton Keynes, made a seat, jumped in. Not crashing it is a good effort. Firstly, on a wet start when you've not started a Grand Prix in 8.5 months, and so for that, Yuki Tsunoda is my driver of the day. I was very impressed.
He was my driver of the weekend. I know that's not an accolade we're allowed to be talking about, but I think he had a stunning weekend. I think Lando, for me, was the driver of the day. I know he won the race. That's an easy thing to say, but I think the Lando that we saw, and we talked about it at the start, was just so impressive from start to finish. So many different factors came into play as well, and he handled them all perfectly. And at no point in that race did I think he couldn't win it. And I think that's quite a step forward for Lando. I'm not sure I could ever say that in any other race that I've watched with Lando. So I thought that was an impressive step forward for him.
Okay, and for me, it's the man we were talking about 5 minutes ago, Fernando Alonso. It was so good to see him back with a smile on his face, and to do that one stopper, I thought was sensational in what were hugely difficult conditions. One final question from me. We haven't mentioned Audi. Nico Hülkenberg, P8, second points finish in 2 races. There was some frustration bubbling away a few races back. I feel that we're seeing the real Hulk now.
Yeah, I think there were some worries, frankly. Up until Hungary, nothing was going his way, and Gabriel Bortoleto was outperforming him comfortably. I think he did a great job starting with avoiding his teammate, who had that 360 right at the beginning. Incredible instincts to avoid that. And then he went on to build a really impressive race in the way that he hasn't always really been able to do this year.
It's interesting because it's the first mention of development for next year that I've had from anyone so far. Was just checking in with Alan McNish, who said Audi are pushing for this year. We could potentially gain a championship, constructors championship position from Haas, who are having a little bit of a difficult time. But we have got half an eye on 2027. It's a bit of a moving target still, but Audi, I think, are on the ascendancy. They're doing a brilliant job, and I'm starting to expect to see at least one Audi in the points now, rather than it being impressive every time they are, which is where I think they started the year.
Well, Audi currently P8 in the Constructors' Championship, 5 points behind Haas. Well, guys, thank you again. Great to have you on the show. And for more reaction and analysis from Zandvoort, please go to f1.com, the F1 app, and at F1 on social media. And make sure you check out F1's other official podcast this week. Cadillac's Sergio Perez is my guest on F1 Beyond the Grid. He shares some great insight about his Red Bull exit, the reservations he had about coming back to Formula One, and why the Cadillac project is so motivating for him. That's out on Wednesday, and you can watch our chat on the F1 YouTube channel. Well, thanks very much for listening. We will, of course, be back next Monday with our preview of the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, so we'll speak to you then. F1 Nation is produced by Formula One and Audio Boom Studios.